Nigeria House Davos 2026.
Moderating this fireside chat for us today is the nun. She's been here a number of times on stage. We actually had her here earlier on this morning as well. I'm just waiting for her to fully get mic'd, and I believe she's about to be ready. I will now invite on stage Miss Stephanie Busari. Please join us and put our hands together as she comes on stage. She will moderate this session. She will be letting you know a little bit more than I have done about our panelists today. And thank you.
Aren't you excited to hear from such a powerhouse entrepreneur all the way from Nigeria? Let me just bring out her bio so that we can get the full effect of what a powerhouse she is. So, Tara Fela-Durotoye is the founder and CEO of House of Tara. She's a pioneer makeup artist who pretty much single-handedly founded the makeup industry in Nigeria. As my colleague previously said, before her, there was no makeup industry, and she really built up that beauty industry from scratch. She's a powerful speaker. She's invited to speak all around the world. She's a friend, mentor, and a sister to many, and she's now transitioned from House of Tara to build a platform called Building Beyond You. So we're going to hear more about that succession and how she's successfully taken her brand from one brand to building another. So please join me in welcoming Tara Fela-Durotoye to the stage.
Excellent.
Your first Davos.
Yes.
And how has it been?
I love it. The Nigeria House has made me incredibly proud. I got quite a few feedback from foreigners. I met a man who's from Togo on the train, and he was like, you should be so proud of the Nigeria House and how we've showed up. So kudos to the team at the Nigeria House, Davos, for such an excellent presentation of Nigeria. I didn't hear that clap well. Yeah, well done, well done.
Yes, amazing. I mean, this is one of the most popular joints in town. And where else can you get jollof rice in Davos?
The type of jollof rice.
Yes.
Particularly.
So Tara, why was it important for you to come to Davos? First of all, let's start off with that.
First of all, I think it was an important conversation when we think about creative economy as an employer at scale. I've been very passionate about the creative industry for a very long time. Obviously, in my area of experience is in beauty, makeup, and education. But I know the entire creative industry particularly needs this kind of conversation. We need to see, I thought the topic was very important because we need to see more of these businesses grow at scale. So that when you're mentioning the names of brands that have transitioned from talent-led hustle to systems-led organizations, you immediately begin to think of multiple brands, not few. So there are very few Taras, for example, who started as a makeup artist and then built to become an institution. And now I've transitioned from my day-to-day role as the CEO, MD, and I sit on the board now, but we now have a professional managing director who's running the organization. And that's because the business is not founder dependent. It's a business that is not dependent on my personal relationships. It's a business that's not dependent on who I know. It's a business that's dependent on policies, structures, systems that have been designed to keep it growing so that you can employ more people. The reason why the continent has unemployment issues is because we don't have enough businesses at scale that can employ, but also enough businesses that outlive their founders in such a way that this generation who's working today, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, and 100 years' time, the company still exists to continue to be an employer of labor. That needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've taken House of Tara from a pioneer startup to a multi-generational business with also an academy attached. What do you think is the single most important institutional hurdle that Nigeria creative entrepreneurs must clear to stop being one-man shows and start becoming large-scale employers?
I think, first of all, it's understanding the importance of building capability, but also attracting competency. Building capability means that you're talented, you're the talent, you are the musician, you are the fashion designer, you are the makeup artist. That talent is fantastic. It is great for the startup. For the moment where you create confidence and trust in the consumer, you get to a point where you're generating income consistently, you're profitable. But for that to be sustained, it needs to move from you, who's the talent, to designing an institution that delivers consistently, not just on you, but on the system of that organization. And I think, first of all, it's for creative to understand the importance of developing that capability. We heard Tiwa Savage talk earlier about how she went to school to study the business of music.
Yeah.
I love that, and I wish I would find more creatives who would take time to go to business school. I went to Harvard, I went to Yale, I did the Stanford Seed program for over a period of 6 months. I went on the CP program at Lagos Business School. I was on the OMP program at Lagos Business School. This is consistently ensuring that my capability was being developed. But it's not enough to develop yourself, but it's also important to attract the competencies that are required, the talent that will support your gifting. So you're a talent, but you then need to recruit people who will support you in your gifting, whether it's in operations, it's in finance, in the areas where you are weak, so that a business is built around your gifting. And that business mustn't be dependent on you. And I think that is one major hurdle that we need to think about and move away from this one-man show.
Yeah, and so with your new venture, you're really trying to address that,
Yes.
A new platform called SEEP Africa.
Yes, and the Building Beyond You.
And Building Beyond You. So let's talk about SEEP Africa. Is that
Yes.
an acronym for something?
Yes. So it's sales enterprise. The idea behind the sales enterprise movement is really about how do we, first of all, think about placement. So first of all, it's about developing people. Recently, the Cowrywise CEO put out a post, and I hear in God knows a few minutes there were so many people, thousands of people who were already interested in the role that he was publicizing. And we get that all the time, but at the end of the day, the organization can only pick a few people. Oftentimes, it's not because we don't have people, it's simply because we don't have the talent, we don't have the skill set, we don't have sufficient training for that skill set. So my thought is we have a retail industry that is growing consistently, but we have the right staffing and are the founders being forced to become the teachers. But if we can create an organization that does that training, because of my experience in retail and in not just retail in one location, multiple locations, and not just in one city, across the entire country. Nigeria is a huge country. The minute you've learned how to retail, you can take that information and create a curriculum and train people. And I think when people are better trained, then it's easier for those who have visions to open a retail chain. They have more confidence in that. Building Beyond You Institute is really about how do we help founders to begin to see themselves as custodians of the future and who want to build businesses that last and want to outlive them. In 1964, the Time magazine did a feature about Nigerian millionaires. And in that feature, there were 12 Nigerian millionaires who were featured in the article. And when I look at the names of those millionaires, they were entrepreneurs, founders, they were in rubber plantation, they were in insurance. Many of those businesses no longer exist. And that provokes me to say, how can we begin to have, when CNN does 100th century, celebrating 100 years of any business, how many Nigerian or African businesses can we say have been up to that level? So my desire is to see that, and how do we create an organization or a platform that supports founders? We recently had our very first annual gathering in Lagos, and we had 1,300 founders in the hall, and that event was planned over 7 weeks. And the reason why is because there's interest. Founders are desperate. They want to be intentional to say, this is what I've built, but I want it to outlive me. Yeah. And how can I do that? Who's doing it? And what can we do to keep it growing?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point about CNN 100th century, I think when we were doing that program, there was only Union Bank in Nigeria
At the time.
At the time. So, it's interesting to see how those businesses will scale and grow. But you attracted a lot of interest and surprise because founders are usually quite, you've spent decades, building a business and it's your baby, right? And sometimes you don't want to let it go.
Yes.
But you did something that a lot of people considered surprising. You stepped away from your baby, House of Tara. What was the process of doing that? Was it a long-term process? Or did you come to a realization that, okay, it's time to walk away from this and bring someone else to carry on my vision? Talk us through that.
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's important to have this conversation because many reasons, one of the reasons why entrepreneurs don't step away is because they're afraid of the future. They're afraid of what is next. In some cases, their business are so tied to their identity that they don't see themselves outside of that business. I was very, very privileged. House of Tara has a very strong governance framework. Our chairman is an entrepreneur who founded her business at a young age like me. So in terms of similarities, she was able to tell me there will be a season you'll get to where you'll become exhausted and tired. And we don't want you to get there. We want you to prepare towards that. So there were two things that the board did. Number one was to encourage me to have my personal board of directors. So a group of friends who I was accountable to, we structured my thinking around what does House of Tara need that only I can do now? And how can I do that to prepare the business? Number two, what is it that the business needs to, how do I need to prepare for the future for the business in such a way that even if I'm not there, the business will continue? So there were two things. And conversations with my personal board was centered around those two things.
Right.
So Tara, you've said you need to do A before you step away. Because if you don't do it, there will be a problem. You said the business needs B to continue. And every conversation is about that. So that's for my personal board of directors. Secondly, the board of House of Tara made it a point to support me in the finding the right person process. And first of all, articulating what I wanted, what was important for the business, and then finding that person. Board was involved in actually, interviewing at multiple levels to find the right person. So that was great. But I think one of the other things was I also had built a personal brand outside of House of Tara.
Right.
Even though for many years, every time I went out, people would say, "Oh, I recognize you. Are you House of Tara?" And I almost have to say, well, my name is Tara Feladure, right? But over the years, I became conscious, deliberate about creating my personal brand. And what is my personal brand outside of House of Tara? What do I stand for? What are my values? And that's how I became a speaker, for example, and I decided to speak on multiple conversations. And I no longer box myself within the beauty industry. I was intentional about changing my title from being creative director to being current CEO. And so when I went out to speak, I would insist that when I'm being introduced, it would say current CEO of House of Tara. People say, why do you say current CEO? I say, because I'm not going to be CEO forever. Psychologically, I was preparing myself for that separation. Thank you. And I think I also was conscious about building financial independence outside of the business. Obviously, because of corporate governance, I had a salary. But what that meant was there were many things that were attached, perks that were attached to my role as CEO that was going to be transferred to a new person. So I would no longer have some of those perks. Of course, there are other perks I would now have because I have now left and I'm the founder and what have you, profit sharing, whatever. But I knew that I would no longer have the dependence as well. And I needed to design my life in a way that I diversified my investment. And many entrepreneurs are afraid of taking that step because their only source of income is that business. And so I created digital assets. I became conscious about developing incomes, investing in mutual funds, and things that were passive assets that would bring me income with or without House of Tara. And so when I left and I wasn't earning a salary, there wasn't any difference. I calculated what does it cost to be Tara on a daily basis. When I was CEO, I had a car, I had a driver, I had all these things. What is the cost in Naira and in dollars? And if I left, will my lifestyle change? If I was invited to Davos without House of Tara, would I be able to come? And when I knew I could, I stepped away feeling happy.
That's so powerful. So really, did you just walk away and say, okay, House of Tara's done, Or, I mean, how often do you check in? Or
So I have
what's
a
the process?
mentoring relationship with my MD.
Okay.
So we mentoring relationship divided into two. One is we talk business, but we also talk personal.
Okay.
And so between ourselves, she has to host me once a month. The next month I would host. So
Okay.
she decides what restaurant she's taking me to. The next month I decide. And in those times we talk only about personal things. She's female, so we talk about husband, children, her personal desires, and the things that are important to her. And other times it's me. We talk about my kids, my family, and all the things that I'm doing. To ensure that the communication is present, and that's very important when you're mentoring. And then the final part is, of course, every month she does a report. Every quarter she does a board. She comes into the board and presents to the board. And in presenting to the board, I don't have to be there to follow up whatever. It's the board that's asking her questions, and I'm just one of the people
Right.
on the board. So we have a mentoring relationship. I still get feedback from customers from time to time, so I kind of check in with her to say, okay, this person said, this person said. But other than that, it's really about supporting her to
Right.
succeed, because I want her to succeed.
Amazing, amazing. So I'm going to ask a question now about regulatory frameworks. And there's someone in the audience from the Ministry of Creative Economy who is kind of, in charge of job creation. She's going to take the mic and just join us with some questions. Can we give her a mic? And she can introduce herself after this question. So when you were building this national retail chain, what were the physical or regulatory infrastructure gaps that almost stopped you? And this is where I think I want to bring in a government voice,
Okay.
where they can feed in
Okay.
to whatever the response is. And how do you see the government's current Destination 2030 agenda addressing these bottlenecks for the next generation?
So first of all, it was a desire to build a retail infrastructure. It didn't exist. And still it's a problem right now. If you wanted to open a chain of stores, first of all, it's conversations around policies around rental income and rental fees. For you to be able to see this sort of growth, it's difficult because many brands have to pay 2 years, in some cases 3 years in rent. You can't really, we need patient capital, right? But every time you have to put that kind of lump sum into just the retail space itself, it becomes difficult for you to actually invest money in the things that you're actually going to trade in. And so I believe that if I had support, one as a pioneer business, or the kind of loan that is long-term, that is not 25%, because there's limited, there's so much less that you can do simply because of that. I feel that limits you. When you want to scale employment, you have to have multiple locations. You have to have platforms that makes it possible for you to need more people. Because we have people, our problem isn't talent. Our problem is that we don't have enough businesses that are built at scale so that we can employ as many people. Still, the government is still the highest employer of labor today. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'd like to invite you to join us.
I am head of job creation at the Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy. As you know, we discussed on previous panels, it's the first ministry of its kind in Nigeria, and our mandate is very much focused on empowering the entire ecosystem.
Okay. So in terms of how does your ministry support startup and first-time entrepreneurs and things like that?
So there's a very, as I mentioned, this is the first ministry of its kind. And so one of the things that we've been doing is contributing and collaborating alongside other ministries. We've worked very closely with the Ministry of Trade and Investment on the IP policy, which is connected to fashion, but also extremely connected to beauty as well. Exactly. We've also been working with the IDICE program as a collaborator. And so one of the things that we're focusing on is the Startup Act as well, which will also focus on, the entire ecosystem, also focus on ways to create means to finance the sector, more diverse financing mechanisms, also create opportunities for bank guarantees, which are really the first and most important factor in ensuring that we can actually get access to the patient and reasonable capital that you were talking about.
Yeah. So I'd like to contribute a little bit. So we had a difficulty that the Tara products were counterfeited from out of China. And I recall that one of the governments of a Western country sent someone to have a conversation with me. And when they asked her to come, she came from the State Department office. And the question she was asking, I was curious. But what I found, the reason why she wanted to have that conversation with me was that government wanted to know what I did when I had that difficulty, because their brands, international brands, were coming into Nigeria. What I saw was a government who was standing for their local brands by almost predicting that the same thing that happened to a local brand is likely to happen to our brands when they arrive in that country. It's not a brand that is owned by the government. It's a brand that's privately owned. I didn't see that support from the federal government when I had that crisis, and I'm hoping that in the future, and as more people are building their personal makeup cosmetic brands, that the government will begin to create regulatory frameworks that support and protect our IPs. That's local. And I just wanted to share that with you so you could have that conversation as well in the future.
No, it's extremely important. And just to add to what you said, I think this is why the IP policy, which was recently finalized and will ultimately be enacted into law, is a really important step towards this. There were conversations earlier about the music industry, about royalties, etc. Another thing that our ministry has been doing on the music side, but it connects back, is working very closely with the CMOs. As you mentioned, there are a lot of mechanisms that are used to protect IP and actually be able to support industries. In South Africa, for example, you see a CMO structure that is slightly more developed than ours. And so in addition to us working on the IP policies, translating that into much more up-to-date laws, it's also about, like you said, building the right institutions, structures, etc., to actually be able to advocate on behalf of our creatives, and as you mentioned, protect our IP. The final thing I'll say is also it's really important to protect our heritage as well. So we're looking increasingly at things like geographical indicators, for example, so that you can actually say that, okay, if you're calling something Ashoke, then it means that in the same way that Ghana, for example, has been able to trademark Kente, and so you can't call it Kente if it's made outside of Ghana, we're also integrating all of these things into our IP policies and ultimately into law. And then after that, like in a lot of other countries, you form corporations and you form guilds that are supported by government, but mainly spearheaded by the private sector. And these are the things that actually help creatives to be able to keep their creative IP in country, which has a huge impact on job creation, because you can only call it that if it's made in country.
Fantastic.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate you coming to share those thoughts.
No problem.
Okay, so we're out of time. Do we have time for one or two questions?
Yes.
Hey, my name is
Hello.
Simba. How are you? So I'm a new business owner, and I'm kind of old school when it comes to business development. But coming here and seeing AI on every single billboard and pamphlet, I wanted to know, how do you plan on using AI to develop what you've already created?
Number one is from a training and development standpoint, and then two is in terms of consumer interaction. The beauty industry is one that has found wings and legs in multiple ways, but I think what is still fundamental is that women still want to look beautiful and enhanced. And tools that we can use now to ensure that some of the issues that we've had for a very long time, which is, for example, I'm a woman, I'm trying to find my perfect shade, my perfect tone, and every brand doesn't create products for everyone. House of Tara as an organization will continue to use AI to make it easier for our customers to be able to walk up to us and say, well, in the past, I may not have been able to find my shade, but because this tool was applied, I'm now be able to do so. That's one of the ways. The other way is in training and development around advancing that so that we can skill and also employ more people. And please, when we talk about creative industry, I know that there's a lot of talk about music and fashion, but I don't want us to forget about beauty. Beauty is significant as well. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I see that generally.
Yeah, and it's funny. I noticed a trend recently on social media, Instagram in particular, of people when they came into town for the holidays during Dirty December. They raided all these like Nigeria makeup stores, House of Tara included, and many of them saying that their perfect shade, they were finding their perfect shades in these brands, and what they couldn't find easily, in their home countries.
I think one of the things that's great about our industry is that many of us are practitioners. People who are designing the products are actually people who've used the products. If you're a makeup artist and you're a professional, you bring a different eye to product development, as opposed to in the Western world where one huge company is the one who just decides what is what, and that's what the difference is. And we've seen that. And Nigeria has set the tone for makeup on the continent. I recently had the commercial attaché to one of the Nigerian embassies in Southern Africa reach out to me and say, I just wanted to call you to say well done, because we're getting demands for visas. Because people are coming, when you ask them what they're coming to Nigeria for, they're coming to House of Tara Makeup School. And I remember when you started this business with your makeup box, and to think that years after, I'm sitting down here approving visas for people to come to Nigeria just to come to makeup school.
That is incredible. Can we give a huge round of applause for that? One more question.
My question is not specific to the creative of makeup, or it's around food and our cultural exports and how that becomes counterfeit. We do not have the regulations that protect us when we export food, for example. So if, for example, we have certain recipes and we have indigenous stuff that we need to export. But when we come to the international market, we face all these compliance regulations because in the country we do not have a governing body that really makes sure that they hold people accountable. And so even if something as simple as our Zobo now becomes very popular and everybody has a name for it now, we cannot take credit for the recipes that originated from our country. And then this becomes a problem. People can buy our Zobo from our markets, but when we come to the market, the ones that come from Nigeria are not accepted. And this is my pain point, and I just wondered how does that fit into this
conversation?
Exports.
Tia Kinsami, if you were here yesterday, day to day it's IP, but I'm a policy wonk, and that's why to a large extent I do have an answer. A lot of that, what you have referenced, is based on the fact that a couple of things. One, is first to market. There are regulations actually in Nigeria that speaks to standards if you're going to be exporting food, whether in raw form or in cooked form or in made form. However, some of the challenges that has been encountered is the fact that the standards are not nationalized, so to say, but are sitting in pockets. So what you just referenced, for example, part of that is sitting within the Ministry of Agriculture, which is not as enabled as it should be in Nigeria. Part of it is sitting somewhere in a funky way within the IP policy. Some of it is sitting within the ministry that is in charge of exports. So to the point I was making yesterday on our panel, the need to be able to coordinate to support our export business is important. Prior to the minister becoming HM, Minister for FMITI, when she was the head of PBEC, one of the things I truly enjoyed with having PBEC in place was the fact that it would help you navigate. But there's an onus on the entrepreneur that you actually know what laws you need to engage with so that you can have the right labels. So I'm aware that there are businesses out of Nigeria that have the right licenses and can bring Zobo in, and Zobo is not special to us, by the way. Yes, that can bring a range of food in, even into countries like Canada that have stringent laws and they pass the mark.
Thank you for that. As an employer in that industry, I find out that there's an issue there's a disparity with talent and price. In today's market, a lot of people that are employed in the creative industry, because this is an industry of personal talent that has to be groomed, but people do not understand the level of grooming that is necessary. From your experience, how have you had to deal with it when you hire somebody and 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, they believe they have the skills to break off on their own and start their own thing? You begin to see every female who has done 1 month of training with a makeup box. And not just a makeup box, charging exorbitant prices for a service. And sometimes their quality of service is not reflected in the work that they've, in the prices that they've charged. And this, I want to say, is actually a big challenge in the industry, because when you then want to open up institutions to employ this labor, you're faced with the risk of saying, I'm going to spend 6 months building you. I'm going to spend 1 year building you up, only for you to wake up one morning and move. How have you tackled that? How would you advise younger entrepreneurs coming into this industry that are going to face this thing with the quality of labor? How can you advise us to go ahead with that?
In the country that we're from, where it's still a developing country, there are few things that can't change now. They can't change immediately. One of them is that if you are an entrepreneur and you're building, I always say you're also a trainer. You are a school. You are a values champion. And so when you see your business not just as a place where people come and gain a salary, gain employment, it's also a place where you train people so that they can become, number one, better service operators when they leave. Never think that people will stay forever. Our country is still developing. So I often tell entrepreneurs that if you choose not to train people and they stay, it impacts your business. If you choose not to train them when they leave, our country isn't better. So train because it's important, because it makes our country better, and in many cases makes your brand also better. And I benefited from that. People will leave, and young people are leaving all the time. But the question for you is, how do you systemize the business so it's not dependent on a person, including that one person? However, in terms of quality of service, I still believe that if we had more institutions are designed in a way that people are developed when they are in those institutions. If we had 100 House of Towers, what you find is that there will be a training model. People will be trained in leadership. People will be trained in the skill. They become refined. But when we don't have businesses that have been built at scale, we don't have the capacity to actually do it. If my business is still founder-led, I'm still trying to use my personality, my presence, my personal relationships to build my business. I don't really have the time to train everyone who's going tomorrow. So we need more businesses that are scaled, and so when they're at scale, they have the capacity to train, because institution building is also about developing talent.
Okay, thank you so much, Tara.
Great question.
Can I ask from a personal point of view?
Yes.
As someone who was in corporate, in international media for 25 years and has transitioned just in the past year to become an entrepreneur.
In a great way. We love what you're doing now.
Okay, thank you.
Telling
I
our
appreciate
stories.
it. So what advice do you have for me, a first-time entrepreneur, and what mistakes should I avoid in this building phase?
So first of all, I want to commend you for what you've done. I think it's very difficult to transition from corporate, especially at the level that you transition from, CNN, and being this well-known, celebrated CNN journalist. But having the courage to say, you know what, I am more than CNN, and I have much more to give to the world. And now you're telling our stories and celebrating Africa, African women, especially in this part of the world, to the world. So well done, and kudos to you for that. Thank you. I think you started well. If I was going to speak to you again to say, can we start to be systems-driven today? Not to be too founder-dependent today, so that as the business is being built, it's built in a way that is based on long-term design of building beyond yourself. If you start, and you're lucky because you've been in corporate, so you know how corporate works. You can apply. In my case, I had to learn from the field. You already have that advantage. Apply it today, and don't be too founder-led, founder-dependent in such a way that if you decided 2 years' time you wanted a new MD to run the company, it'll be easier for you to do so. Those are my thoughts.
Wonderful. I could listen to Tara all day. So much wisdom. Please give her an amazing, rousing round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much.